Hi, this is Anna Imagination with a Healing Garden. I am talking today on shifting perspectives on triggers versus quirks and whether or not we should resolve triggers when it comes to PTSD. When I first started my own therapy almost a decade ago, I walked into my therapy with the assumption that every trigger had to be resolved. Now, at that time, I had 44 triggers. And it began a long road of having to apply cognitive behavioral therapy with identifying the trigger, recognizing the physical signs, and then diverting. And I did about 3 to 6 months of this before I discovered meditation. And I realized, well, wait a minute, if meditation is the practice of stopping, pausing, and reflecting, why not apply it to cognitive behavioral therapy? And this was the first warning sign, the first red flag that I picked up on in my therapy that told me that therapy was really inadequate because, well, there's already a 6,000-year-long method called meditation that's been in practice in the Eastern medicine for, 6,000 years. And it, in essence, is cognitive behavioral therapy. And when I studied cognitive behavioral therapy in psychology, I realized that while the Western world was going, oh, we have this profound new thing, I went, no, you don't. It's a 6,000-year-old practice in India and in China and Japan. So I don't know what you're on about. So aside from using some high-end words, it's really just meditation. Cognitive behavioral therapy is. It's you pause, you reflect, you observe, you do a body scan, you recognize the symptoms, and then you choose not to react and you divert. And they basically plug in positive affirmations, which is manifestation, and mantras, which is, again, in an Eastern practice, and it diverts. But Western psychology loves to slap a hole. Well, we invented this, and they have this doctor that they credit for discovering it. And I'm going, no, you didn't. Dialectical behavioral therapy is all of that: meditation, positive affirmations, and mantras with formal logic, formal argument, and debate from philosophy. That's it. And it was this massive, it became my forte. PTSD, of everything in psychology, PTSD became my little bitch. There's just no other words for it. I mastered PTSD. I had to with 44 triggers. And it was something that, and not only my own triggers, but my then husband had been diagnosed with PTSD, and 2 of my 3 children had been diagnosed with it. So I was at one point for 5 years in the middle of, at the height of my therapy, I was managing a household with 4 people, all with PTSD, whose personalities and behaviors were bouncing off of each other. And we would get into this, oh, yeah, why am I not talking about this sooner? This is extraordinary. It would literally set off a chain reaction like fireworks or poppers all light up around all of us. And every one of us was a trigger waiting to happen. Now, one of my children was not diagnosed, and that's fucking bullshit. And at the time, my therapist was huge with not diagnosing complex PTSD. And I agree. I think that this whole complex PTSD is fucking bullshit because it belittles PTSD in general. And I have seen way too many people boast, well, I have CPTSD as opposed to PTSD. So she didn't cater to that, which I actually commend her for. She felt that it was unnecessary, and it is. And she felt that it was putting an importance or a status. This is really where I have a problem. I need to do a whole thing just on diagnosis in general. Diagnosis really, it's a status symbol for people. I've seen so many people brag about their diagnosis like it's a status, it's an accomplishment. It's disgusting. So I had 4 people in this household, and I'm going to say it. The one child I had, he didn't get diagnosed, and I'm going, no, that's bullshit. He absolutely has it. They just the and I talked to his therapist about it. We had a long discussion about it, and he gave me reasons why. And sometimes when you give people diagnosis, a lot of times when you give people diagnosis, the people will take the patients will take the diagnosis and manifest them in their own brain and actually cause more mental damage on themselves if they're diagnosed. So there are therapists out there who refuse to diagnose because they don't want to feed the powers of manifestation. Basically, they don't want to enable their mental illness by diagnosing a mental illness. So I had all of these people in this house, and one of us would get triggered, and it would just set off this chain reaction like a domino, just boom. And then the next one would go off, and then the next one. So I became a master, I had to, at managing 5 people, 4 people with PTSD, including while I was having a trigger. So in the middle of me having a trigger, I would have to go into psych mode of, okay, we all are triggered. Let's pause. Let's all step back. Let's reflect. And I had to put my children through meditation. I had to diffuse and manage my then husband, who was also a grandiose narcissist, very aggressive and very violent. And he would get set off with his triggers, and he would become a violent tornado. And then it became a keep the children safe. That's literally what I called it, was keep the children safe mode, where it was isolate the children, get them away from him, calm him down. And I would manage this whole thing, bouncing between all of these people while I was triggered, calming everybody down. And when I would take this information back to my therapist, there was this massive working on my own triggers, because the more effective I got at controlling my own triggers, the more helpful I could be in the household. So I went from 44 triggers down to, well, right now I have 5. I only have 5. And one of them came up yesterday. Actually, one of my most severe triggers came up yesterday. 2 of them, actually. And I have 2 that are kind of partnered, grouped together. And then I have another 2 that are grouped together. And then I have my standalone happy place. I have a 5th trigger that's actually, it's a very different trigger. And I'll talk about that here in a minute. But there is this assumption that when we have PTSD triggers, they all have to go. So when you have a PTSD trigger, you walk in, and the concept is basically it's pause, don't react. That's the first thing. Don't react. It's you step in, you observe it, you pause, you reflect, you watch the trigger, you watch how your body responds. This is basically when you are given a catalyst, and this is the process. When you are given a catalyst, it sets off think of it as a spark, like when you have I'm looking for a lighter right now. Like when you flick a lighter, there's that spark, that catalyst. That's that moment. And it's supposed to go through a normal chain of events. But instead, because of the rewiring of your nervous system, and this is where I love to do my whole breaks off into a separate timeline. So you have 1985, and yeah, if you get my reference, you're epic and you're my people. You have this basic timeline of 1985, and that's the way things are supposed to go. But a PTSD trigger, will create basically a break off of that timeline and create 1955. And that is the problem. The 1955 alternate timeline is the trigger, and that's the problem. So the goal is basically to recognize that point in time, that very specific moment when the break occurs and a new timeline is born. The goal is to immediately recognize the symptoms when that alternate universe, basically it's a glitch in the matrix. That's what I'm going to call it. There's a glitch that happens in the matrix. And when the glitch happens, there's a series of clues that you're supposed to look for. And that's the first stage of PTSD trauma recovery, is recognizing what the glitches are and recognizing when the glitches get set off. So you can go, whoa, there's a glitch in the matrix. We just switched from 1985 over to 1955. Let's switch everything back. And you have to consciously pause, reflect, and don't respond. Now, if you react to 1955, then you encourage 1955. If you react to 1955, you enable it. And that's the problem. That's what a lot of people don't understand. And that is the ongoing issue with any trauma. If you have suffered from narcissistic abuse, please pay attention over the next 5 minutes. So everyone just needs to like listen for a minute. When you are abused by a narcissist, newsflash, every abuser is a narcissist. And yeah, I absolutely stand by that statement and I will defend it if I need to. Every abuser is a narcissist. When you are abused by a narcissist, the narcissist literally disrupts the matrix and gives you an alternate timeline of 1955. And they condition you to act and enable and respond as if you're in 1955. They give you this alternate universe that they want you to respond to. And that way, when they leave, when they're no longer present, your brain is still enabling their abuse without them being present. That is huge for a narcissist. They want you so consumed by them that you're thinking about them when they're not around. So when people are absent, when people go away, when the abuser leaves, they can relax knowing that their programming and their abuse is still going on. And the first wake up call I had with this was one of my abusers abused me from what year was that? 1996 to 2001. He abused me from 1996 to 2001. And he gave me one very clear message. You can't have New York City without me. This was the limiting belief that he embedded into my head. And if you know anything about me, you know New York City is my wife. So he embedded this belief inside of me that I could not have New York City without him. In the year 2019, 2001 was the last time I saw this person. 2019, I finally went to New York City without him. When I got to the city in 2019, I realized one thing, that it took me 18 years to realize I could have New York City without him. It took me 18 years. I didn't go into the city for 18 years because of this limiting belief that he put inside my head, that I couldn't have New York City without him. That is how powerful brainwashing and narcissism abuse is. I didn't even think about going into the city. I didn't even try. It didn't even occur to me. I had such a powerful limiting belief that you are not allowed to have the city without him. So that when we broke up, oh, well, that's it. I just can't go to New York now. That's how powerful that was. That's how impactful it was. So that programming is still in your head, your own limiting beliefs from this alternate universe, long after the abuser is gone. And the problem is, if you react to that alternate timeline, to those limiting beliefs, you're going to nurture them and enable them. And that is a problem. So in order to break the hold, you have to stop nurturing and enabling the alternate universe. In order to do that, you have to go back to this glitch, this moment that 1985 breaks off into 1955. And you have to basically pause, stop, and go, whoa, I switched. I'm on an alternate universe now. I'm working off of the abuser's perspective. And that's what 1955 is. It's the abuser's perspective. So you have your perspective, which is the truth, which is 1985. That's all you. And then 1955 is your abuser's perspective. And now you're running off of their beliefs. And the more you run off of their beliefs, that alternate universe in 1955, the more you are enabling their perspective. So you have to consciously step back, reflect, and make sure that you stay in 1985 on your timeline. And to do that, you have to recognize when that glitch occurs. You have to notice when the glitch happens in the matrix. When the glitch happens, that's when your body responds to the trigger. That it's a nanosecond. We are talking breaths. We are talking nano breaths. It's a series of your body temperature changes, your blood pressure rises, your heartbeat increases, your breathing changes. And suddenly you're in tunnel vision mode like this because you've just switched over to 1955. And I'm going to say it a million times out over and over again. Here's Not Here is an episode in season 6 of The Walking Dead. Phenomenal episode for showing you what PTSD looks like. Holy shit, is it phenomenal. Every time the camera switches over to Morgan's point of view, you get to see PTSD. And every time it switches out of Morgan's point of view, you get to see the real world. And it is the only example on television that I have seen that is spot on to what PTSD is like. I have watched that episode like it was so funny because for scientific reasons, I have watched that episode like 30 times just to analyze the PTSD in it. It's extraordinary, beautifully well done. Like seriously, gorgeous, gorgeous cinematography. They nailed PTSD. Absolutely beautiful. So, good God, they did such a great job with it. And it's something that I strongly recommend people watch if you can handle the zombies, because it is such a huge, huge learning experience to see this is what PTSD looks like. It's extraordinary. So when I sat down and started digging through my 44 traumas, my 44 triggers, I assumed at that time that I had to cover all of them. And I busted my ass. I got through all of them. I was also dealing with arachnophobia and claustrophobia. It was a lot. I was also dealing with agoraphobia, xenophobia, and social anxiety. It was a lot. And I got down to the last 5. And suddenly I got to a point where I went, okay, let's talk about the violence and the gore. Let's talk about the animal abuse. Now, when I was 4 years old, I was exposed to, I'm just going to say it, it was the worst animal abuse I have ever seen in my life. And I was 4 years old. I cannot tell people what I saw, what I experienced, because it traumatizes most people. And it's left me to a point when I talk to people, when I go into a rescue shelter for animals, and people start telling me about the animal abuse in those shelters, I have to stop them and say, I can't. Trigger warning. I can't do it. I cannot be exposed to animal abuse on any level. And I still break down with hysterics depending upon how severe it is and how unexpected it is. And I've chosen to keep this trigger. I absolutely consciously chose, because in order to overcome it, I am required to watch multiple pictures of animals being abused to desensitize myself to the violence, the gore, and the animal abuse. That's not desensitization, is actually traumatization. Desensitization is traumatization. And it would basically be on purpose wiring my entire beautiful brain and nervous system to an unnecessary evil for the sole purpose of making me comfortable with animal abuse. I have chosen not to do this. And the consequence of that choice is when I do find a picture on the internet that some jackass decided was okay to post on the internet of an animal having the maimed results of the abuse, I'm going to go into full triggered. Now I'm at a point where when I see it, I get the startled response. I immediately recognize it. Sometimes I break down crying and I know I got to step away, and I'll talk to somebody, and without thinking, they'll go on about an animal abusive story about puppy mills. Banned topic with me, absolute banned topic with me. And banned topic with me. And I'll be talking with somebody and they'll start going off on these puppy mills. And I'm like, no, why are you like, people in my life know you do not talk to me about animal abuse. You do not show it to me. You do not cross that line with me. Not at all. I do not need to see how cruel human beings can be to animals. Been there, done it since I was 4 years old. And I come from a place where humans boasted, bragged about what they did to animals. And I'm just going to leave it there. It was a competition and bragging rights. So I'm a vegetarian proudly for a reason. And I'm going to leave it there. So it's just something I have decided to live with, because I have chosen that it is unnecessary for me to expose myself to this. And it does not, and I'm trying to figure out, does it actually interfere with my life? And I just realized I have 6 triggers. There is one I forgot, and that is the patriarchy. I literally have a PTSD trigger associated with the patriarchy. And it's when you go through your triggers, you really have to ask the question, is the work you are going to invest into the trigger going to improve your life or not? What are you gaining when you decide to tackle a trigger and overcome it? What will you be gaining? Now, in the case of fireworks, in the case of dogs barking is a great example. I could not hear dogs barking. I could not hear dogs whining. I could not hear dogs in a cage. I could not see dogs in a cage. So this was a really big problem for me. I could not be around dogs. I live in New York. For those of you who don't live in New York, Manhattan is just one big giant dog park. Like really. We have more dog parks. It's like dog park, Starbucks, bar, restaurant, dog park, Starbucks, bar. It's that's it. That's the rotation. And every block has a dog groomer, has a pet store for dogs, has a dog sitters, has a dog park. There are more dogs in Manhattan than people. Okay. You can't walk in New York City. Manhattan is just one big giant dog park. My favorite place to go in Manhattan is Central Park's Frisbee Hill. Frisbee Hill is a massive green stretch of area in Central Park where you can take your dog off the leash and let your dog be a dog. And I would go there and have picnics on Frisbee Hill and play with the dogs. I love Frisbee Hill. And during my PTSD recovery, when I was handling that, it was a lot of exposing myself to dogs and learning to hear their different sounds and being okay with that. So is this going to affect the quality of my life? Oh, yes. Oh, yes. Yes, yes, yes. And now I'm fine. I can hear a dog whine. I can hear a dog bark. And I can be around a dog. I have positive dog memories now. Cats, I'm fine. I have tons of positive cat memories to counter the cat abuse I saw. So it's been difficult. It's been very difficult. And when you decide to take on a trigger, really that's it and this is the governing factor. You have your identity with what she or he wants. Your identity very much is going, I want X. If you have a trigger in the way of what you want, you need to cover it. You need to go over that. If you don't want something, if you don't have your identity going, I want this, that's blocking you from going and pursuing what you want, then your quirk, well, that's just it. Your trigger is not a trigger anymore. It's a quirk. And the definition of mental illness is a behavior that interferes with your day-to-day life. And because you can choose whatever your day-to-day life is, you can decide if something's going to be a trigger for you or not. And if it doesn't interfere with your life and your desires and your dreams, then it's quite acceptable to have it. Call it a quirk. Don't call it a mental illness. Don't call it a trigger. And one of mine that I've had an issue with for a very long time now is I have a fear of men who are attracted to me, men who are seeking a sexual or romantic relationship with me. And I'm fine with a man so long as it stays business. But the minute he switches over to pursue, that's when I immediately run into it's a huge trigger for me. And I remember when I started this, I felt obligated to tackle this trigger. I viewed it as I'm afraid of 50% of the population. Now, I'm at a point now where I can interact with men on a business status of, okay, they're over there, I'm over here. I do have my romantic partner, and this does not interfere with him at all. There is no interference with him because I trust him. But when another man comes along and it presents it to me, suddenly I'm going, no. Now I'm polyamorous. Technically, I don't have a problem with having an open marriage, open relationship, and entering into other relationships with other people. But I have this trigger. So technically, I'm poly without practicing. Technically, I'm actually monogamous because I have this trigger. And the way I viewed this, and this has been a huge thing, a lot of pressure from a lot of people that I need to resolve this. Well, don't you find it interfering with your dating life? No, no. Well, if you're single, don't you find it interfering with? No, no. I don't want to date and I don't want to, and we're back to what the identity wants. I don't want to date and I don't want to pursue men and I don't want to engage in men like that. I am very satisfied with what I have. It is more than enough and I don't want to. So now it comes back to identity gets to decide. Now, if I meet somebody and I'm inspired to want a relationship with that person, now I'm going to have to work through some stuff. But until the universe gives me that person to inspire me to want to overcome that, I don't have to deal with it. And this is where I have decided to leave this particular quirk alone because, and this is something that's huge, it is such a huge nightmare to try and pull it all apart. And it's not interfering with my day-to-day life. I have built up a lifestyle that is void of romantic and sexual relationships with men. And I am not feeling inspired or inclined to want to change that. If I did, then I would have some work to do. But I would have to make sure that, no, it's just a hardcore, my identity is just sitting here going, nope. Yeah. It's a very, just not happening. And as I said, the only reason why it's even considered is because I get a lot of outside pressure. This is where perspective abuse comes in, where I've got my perspective with 1985. I'm very happy with where I am. And then other people come in and they tell me what I should and shouldn't do. And they come in with their perspectives because they're internalizing. This is what I love about perspective abuse. This is it right here. I'm going to do a whole nother video this morning on perspective abuse just on this topic. When you have somebody coming along, it's you versus their perspective. This is how we interact with people. This is how we interact with all people, our children, relationships, strangers, that guy on the bus who's creepy. You have your perspective. They come over to you with their perspective. Now it's a versus. It's a your perspective versus their perspective. And there's usually an inquiry of, hey, what's your perspective? And that's when we talk about social events. That's when we talk about politics. And you'll give your perspective and they will either accept it, reject it, or like there's a whole social process. And if they reject it, they're probably not going to like you because you're not seeing eye to eye. This is where they might argue. This is where they might, they'll argue. They'll try and put down your information and insert it, or they'll just compare. Well, this is how I feel about it. Some people love that devil's advocate. So they seek out people with different point of views. Other people don't want the challenging perspective. They want people who match their perspective. So you have people who come along and they see eye to eye and they challenge you. And if you are insecure, if you are used to perspective abuse, you're immediately going to lay down and take in their perspective. And when a person projects their perspective onto you, they are projecting their perspective onto you. They are taking your situation and going, what would I do in this circumstance? How would I handle this circumstance? This person has presented scenario A. How does scenario A fit into my life? So when I tell people, when people ask and it comes up in conversation about this particular man trigger that I have, they immediately take my man trigger and they plug it into their own life. And they immediately, this is all done subconsciously. It's actually quite beautiful. It's one of my favorite things to witness. They will immediately run through a 10-second, how would that scenario fit into my life? And they'll be like, there's that blinking of, wait, what did you just say? Because they did a make believe of what would that look like in their life. They would imagine their life wrapped around my scenario, the man trigger, and it would immediately conflict with their dating life. It would immediately conflict with their lifestyle. It would immediately conflict with their relationships. And they would go, oh, well, no. And this is the part of the perspective where they just regurgitate their own reflection on my scenario A merged with their perspective, and it looks like this. Oh, no, that's not good. You shouldn't do that. You shouldn't. No, you need to fix that. And they're actually talking from a place of, holy shit, that is so incompatible with my lifestyle. That is really what they're trying to say, is that my option A is just not compatible with their lifestyle. Well, guess what? It's their perspective. And that's my perspective. They've subconsciously merged our perspectives into, what would that look like if I tried that in my life? They immediately played through it, realized that it's not compatible, and they are so startled by it. This is where I just laugh because it's so funny to me. They are so startled by it that they reject it. Like, oh no, that's messing up so much. That is not going to work for me. And they're just saying it because they're so shocked with disbelief over the incompatibility of my quirk A versus their lifestyle. But what ends up happening in real life is when they say that, the person who is used to the alternate perspective abuse, 1955, that alternate timeline, will take that as, is there something wrong with me? Oh my God, should I get over that? And you might say that, really? Is it that big of a problem? And then person B, who has this man flourished lifestyle, will be like, oh yeah, you need to get rid of that. And it's not you need to get rid of it. It's, that is definitely not compatible with my lifestyle. And if I had that option, I would have to remove and change my lifestyle. And that's not okay for me. But we're not saying that. No one is saying that because that's not how we think, because no one is thinking perspective thinking. Instead, we are just caught up in our own subconscious minds, trapped in our own perspective view without being fully aware of how a conversation is actually taking place. And suddenly you have the other person with the option A, looking at it now, questioning, should I take care of this? And I have wasted so much of my time and energy pondering this because so many people who have heard of my quirk, of my option A, of my fear of, or my trigger of romantic and sexually interested men in me, it's gotten to a point where I now do a lot of, okay, I have attempted to get over it and I've just succeeded in re traumatizing myself. I have attempted to unravel this nightmarish mess and I have succeeded in re traumatizing myself. I have attempted to go down that road and subjected myself to a slew of dates that I did not want to go on, and it made me fuck miserable. And my partner has been very supportive in all of this. Very, very supportive. As I said, we're poly. So it's been, for him, it's been very, hey, you do you, whatever you need. Here's the growth space. You do you. And he's been very patient with me as I toggle between, I'm doing this, I'm not doing this, I'm doing this, I'm not doing this. And whenever you are inconsistent like that, it's because you are toggling between two different perspectives, yours and somebody else's. And I finally, in May of this year, right after my rape that occurred, I finally closed this door and said, you know what? I'm done. I am done. I don't have to get over these triggers. I'm not hurting anybody by keeping these triggers. I am just hurting myself. I'm tired of trying to force myself to date so I can open my options. And that's really it. With this trigger, I have limited options, but I'm okay with having limited options. I really am. And I realized that I did eat at the buffet a few years ago and I sampled every flavor and everything that was out there. And I know what I like now. I know what I like. I know what I want. I have it. And now I'm at a point where I'm going, I'm definitely closing this door. And I have all of these defenses up. I have all of these walls up. I'm boundaried right up because I don't yet trust myself to make the right decisions. And that's something I'm still working through. And as I have all these things boundaried up, every now and then one gets through. And that's what happened last night. One man got through. Now I'm at a point, if a man can manage to get through my defenses, I have to pause and reflect because there's a glitch in the matrix. And I have to ask, is the universe trying to talk to me? Do I need to listen? Or is this a test? And the universe can give me whatever opportunity I want. It's really up to my identity. Once you get into my manifestation classes, I talk a lot about the balance and the juggling between the universe, intuition, and identity versus the self. And we get into all of that. So this is part of that. We're stepping into that a little bit. So when I am presented with an opportunity, I see it as, oh, look, a door has opened. And it's not very often that a door in this realm opens for me. So when a door opens in this realm, it's enough for me to go, wait, I need to pause, reflect, and think. And I did. I paused, I reflected, and then I quickly slammed the door closed when he assaulted me or when he harassed me by sending me an unsolicited dick pic. And I went, nope, done with that. But then it resulted in this consequential, let's sit back and think about this. You are going to have men who do slip through your defenses every now and then. And this is a trigger that can apply to anybody. You can plug in any one of your own triggers and go through this line of questioning. So do this now. Like as I'm going through this, plug in your own trauma and your own trigger and walk yourself through it. Can this be applied to the situation? So every now and then, I'm going to have somebody who gets through my defenses. And I realized, do I have to consider each and every circumstance where a man manages to get through my defense system? Do I need to stop and look at that as, oh, is this a sign from the universe? And last night, I wrote and journaled and I went, no, I don't. I don't. Because identity doesn't want. And really, that is the question. Identity doesn't want. And when it comes to your decision to overcome triggers, it really comes down to what does your identity want? If your identity doesn't want, then there is nothing wrong with sitting in your little comfort zone, enjoying life. The problem comes when identity wants. That is when you need to make sure identity can. That is a huge, like I can do, and I have master classes that just focus on this. Identity wants and identity can. And it's when she can't, when she wants, that you end up with mental illness, specifically anxiety and then fear, and then you feel trapped and it causes a whole lot of other problems. So it's really, what does identity want and can identity do? And when she can't, when she wants and she can't, that's where you end up with mental illness. That's where the reason why you can't is because you have a fear or a limiting belief that's been placed inside of your cognitive core, and that's preventing her from going because she is too afraid to do. And when she is too afraid to do, that's where mental illness comes from. Now you have to adapt because your identity isn't getting what. Now you have to choose between identity and fear. And when you have to choose between identity and what you're afraid of, literally what you're afraid of is your fear system. You have to choose between your identity and your fear system. And if you are choosing your fear system, or if you don't have the tools and the skills to overcome your fear system, now you're looking into mental illness. Now you're looking into problems in your cognitive core. So when you sit down and you cover PTSD triggers, when you really sit down and start to dig into these things, it's really a huge point of focus of what is it you're doing? What is it you're looking at as far as you going from identity over to, it's identity versus fear. Do you want this? And if you don't want it, and if it's not interfering with your life, then what's the problem? Like there really shouldn't be a reason for it, but you have to be honest with yourself. A great example of this is when I was claustrophobic. It was my very first time in New York City. No, let me rephrase that. It was not my first time in New York City. I had just moved to New York City, and it was Halloween of 2021, and I went to a Halloween party at a bar on the roof with 11 stories, 11 floors. And this was the very first time I was going to the 11th floor. This is the very first time I had to go up in a building in New York City. And there was an elevator, and I was terrified of elevators. So I went, no, I'm going to walk. I'm taking the stairs. And upstate, taking the stairs meant you walk 2 flights. And I had a massive group of people go, Anna, it's 11 stories. It's 11 floors. Yeah, I'm fine. I'm going to take the stairs. It's 11 floors. Yeah, I'm good. No. I got to the 3rd floor and went, fuck this shit. I'm going to be working on my claustrophobia. 3rd floor. I went, fuck this shit. I'm going to work on this. And that is exactly when you start to realize that a trigger interferes with your life. Yeah, I got over that real fast. And you cannot, because the amount of bridges, well, if you have a problem with bridges, if you have a problem with tunnels, New York City is not going to be your friend. If you have a problem with a lot of people, New York City is not going to be your friend. If you have a problem with dogs or rats or roaches, New York City is not going to be your friend. So it really, and I love this about the city, is it really gets you out of your comfort zone. New York City makes you grow. That's what I love about this place, is it really, there's a lot to challenge you, and it makes you grow, which is probably, no, now that I think about it, this is why I'm here, is because my comfort zone is the growth zone. And I've got a whole city that constantly pushes me into, you're going to grow today. You're going to grow today. You're going to go here. You're going to grow. And I love it because I'm constantly being challenged. I can't go to the grocery store without confronting and facing my fears. And it's a constant, you can't live in the city without being put into your growth zone. So if you don't enjoy growing, don't come here. Don't come here. And it's really, and that is it exactly, is this is why my comfort zone is my growth zone. And when I was upstate, it was too easy to have no problems. It was too easy to carve out the perfect little life for me without anyone interfering with it. And that's when I became stagnant and I stopped growing. That's how I became a shut-in, was because I found a way to carve out this perfect little life for me in this fallout shelter that became my bedroom. And suddenly I was dying every day because I wasn't living or growing. And that is, I am huge on this. This is the spectrum. You are growing or you are dying. Even if you want to stay stagnant, you're going to have to do some growing to pull on that force to keep you there. Otherwise, you're dying. So you are going to fall back or you are going to go forward. And if you do not work to go forward, to even maintain, you're not going anywhere. If you decide to be so inactive with your growth, you are deteriorating. So your choices are deteriorate or grow. And if you want to stay stagnant, you're still going to have to balance out your deterioration rate with growth. Otherwise, you're just going to deteriorate. We do not stay stagnant. Stagnation does not work. If you are not reading a book to push your mind into growth, then you are getting stupider. Bottom line, if you are not getting smarter, you're getting stupider. Or you are getting just enough smart to maintain your education. Those are your options. People think, I'm going to stand still or I'm going to grow. And that's bullshit. That's not how it works. You are getting stupider or you are getting smarter. And if you want to stay where you are, you have to put in X amount of work of growth just to maintain. So the first level of growth is just maintaining a stagnant place. And then it's like, imagine there's a treadmill. And people think if you stand still, you're not going anywhere. You're actually on a treadmill. So if you stand still, you're going backwards. So you have to actually put in energy just to maintain the same pace. Now, if you want to grow, you're going to have to learn how to run. And that's what a lot of people don't understand. And that's really when you are sitting down with your trauma and PTSD and managing these triggers, your triggers are pulling you back and heading you that way. And unless you are fighting them, unless you are actually working toward them, you are going to be declining. They are going to consume you. You are going to deteriorate. So, yeah, for me, it's very much you're dying or you're growing. And this is not an option for me. This is my only option, which is why I'm in New York City. So, when you tackle your traumas and your triggers, absolutely ask the question, write them all down. Absolutely write down all of your triggers. Do a full inventory of what are your triggers? What sets you off? What does a trigger look like? What does it entail? And it's basically there's your normal function where everything is happy and everything is awesome. Everything is awesome. And the minute something comes into your life that throws you into an alternate perspective, alternate timeline, that's your trigger. So what is triggering you to break off into this glitch of the matrix? What is causing this alternate timeline? Write down all of them. By naming them, you gain conscious awareness. By gaining conscious awareness, you gain a huge, huge step up from where you were on what you can handle. So it's really a huge arsenal in your toolbox to be able to identify your triggers. Know what your triggers are. After you know what your triggers are, the next step is, are you going to keep them or get rid of them? Are those triggers disrupting your life, or are they tolerable? Are they okay? Prioritize them. Which ones are upsetting your life the most? That tells you which ones you need to start tackling. And I'm actually gonna do a couple classes on PTSD. This is going to be the first one, and then so next I'm going to go over basically how to start managing your triggers and how to start tackling them. And there's exposure therapy involved. Don't jump into this. You need self-care and emotional management to do this properly. So I'm going to go ahead and break that down for you, but I'm going to do like a PTSD, probably a 4-video lesson on what to do with PTSD and how to manage it. But just name the triggers. That's where you need to start. So that's the assignment. Name the triggers. Write down as many as you can. I am available for question and answers. I'm available for any questions, any concerns that somebody has. If you have triggers and you're not quite sure what to do with them, if you have an emergency PTSD situation, if you want to get right into it and you don't want to wait for the videos, whatever it is, you can call me, you can schedule a consultation with me, you can DM me. I'm very, very accessible. This all information is on my website, www.anashealinggarden.org. And I am currently offering 98% off of all of my masterclasses. My masterclasses, I have a class starting on the 14th of August, and that is when my sale ends. So the 14th of August is one of my courses, and the other one is it starts on the 28th of August. So I have a class beginning on the 28th and a class beginning on the 14th of August. So you can grab the sale up until August 14th, and then after that, you can decide if you want to go for the 14th of August classes or the 28th of August classes. It's up to you. Absolutely. But for now, it is 98% off of all of my master classes. And this includes the integration workshop. My integration workshop is amazing. It is a almost 24/7 workshop where you have all the tools, all the resources, and all of me that you need to integrate all the lessons learned in the masterclass with full outline, coordinates. It's everything you need. It's like you have arrived at Mount Everest and you have said to me, I want to climb Everest. And I said, okay, here's the full complete package. Let's do this, including the guide. So take a look at my website, www.anashealinggarden.org. There is a little subcategory, Fuck Trauma Fight. Click on that. It'll drop down that menu. It'll put you right into your ability to choose what you want to do. There's the integration workshops, there's Power of Self, and there's my masterclasses. My masterclasses are what's on sale, 98% off. So jump into that, grab that. And they're usually $5,000 to $30,000. And for my gratitude sale, they are $100 to $600. So grab those now. And this starts again on the 14th of August. I have a class starting. And on the 28th of August, I have a class starting. Go ahead, grab those. And if you need anything, I am here. So thank you so much. And may the kindest of words always find you.